Today on the show, we're pulling off our shirts.
Woo!
We're dancing around the fire. Oh, and we're eating some soup that we sure hope isn't poisoned.
I love soup.
I love dancing around the fire.
Even if it is poisoned, frankly.
Even if it is poisoned.
Welcome to Gom Jabbar, your guide to the iconic world of Dune. We'll be exploring the themes, philosophies, and characters found in the sandy depths of this vast universe, from Frank Herbert's groundbreaking novels to the adaptations on film and TV. My name's Abu.
My name is Leo.
And folks, we are back once again to talk about Dune Prophecy. We're getting into episode 3, such a great episode!
It was so good.
So good. I cannot wait to talk about it.
I'm so glad too, because I know last episode I was very like team show and you were like more on the fence, and it feels so good to like agree that this episode is fucking awesome.
Yeah, this one was a home run.
Before we talk about it, let's get through our housekeeping. Let's make shout out Mapes proud.
Indeed.
And today, spoilers for Dune Prophecy episode 3, obviously. As well as the prequel book, Sisterhood of Dune. If you plan on reading that at some point, why are you watching Prophecy?
Of course, at the top of the show, a huge shout out to our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons, Rob Silver, Daniel Dion, Jonathan Lambert, and C.R. Spruill. I cannot think of a better group to dance shirtless around a fire with than our Kwisatz Haderach level patrons. That would be a night and a bull hunt trip to remember.
Guys, I want to give you my life. I want to give you my future. And certainly not literally like you're going to kill me soon. But, that's how grateful we are.
That's how grateful we are. Of course, our gratitude also extends to all of our patrons at every level who help make this show possible. We cannot thank you enough.
Indeed, we can. All right, let's talk about today's episode. As before, we're going to run through a quick summary to refresh your memory in case it's been a few seconds since you've seen the episode. And then we'll dive into a couple of takeaways, or the things we liked, the things we wish were a little bit better. And then finally, we're going to wrap up by putting our fingers together, dialing in, our pupils dilate, and we're going to share the minutia that we've observed, little Easter eggs and lore tidbits that we spotted.
That's right.
But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. So don't go anywhere, dear listener. We haven't even done the episode yet. We'll be right back right after this.
Welcome back, folks. Let's dive into episode 3 of Dune Prophecy.
Yeah.
Starting with a quick summary, this episode begins with a very mad Valia Harkonnen as she is ousted from the palace, as we saw in the last episode.
Yeah.
The Sisterhood have fallen out of favor with the Carino Emperor and are no longer welcome.
Yeah.
She's mad, but she's got a plan, folks, as we'll see over the course of this episode. We almost immediately flash back then to a young Valia. We're back in the past. And this time we are on a brand new planet, Lankaville, a place that I think House Stark would feel very at home in, snowy Lankaville.
Yeah.
And currently the base world for House Harkonnen at this time in Dune. We see right away the illustrious fur whale industry at work. We're skinning the whales, we're packaging that fur, we're getting that juicy, juicy meat off of them. We don't see the process for whale seed, but I don't think this is that type of show.
It's HBO. I was expecting an extensive whale seed extraction scene.
Right. Sadly, we don't get that. We do get the meat and the fur extraction.
Dang it.
Valia gets some aforementioned meat and brings it back home, and we get a little dinner scene at the Harkonnen household where things are quite tense.
Yeah.
Young Valia is clearly the black sheep of the family. She is upset about how their house and their station has fallen, thanks in part to what she thinks is Vorian Atreides' fault, to the Atreides, and she wants to claw their way back to power and prestige, and she's upset that no one else in the family seems to be bothered by this. Everyone else is quite happy just living on this icy backwater planet, shipping whale fur day in and day out.
Yeah.
She wants something better. And I really liked the line here. She yells at everyone at one point, quote, "This complacency is a disease," end quote. And of course, my ears perked up at the word complacency because, folks, that sounds an awful lot like stagnation.
Yeah. I really felt like her rage and anger and her desire to change and improve their station in life and all of that is so excellent and core to the themes of Dune, and also makes sense why she would then, when channeled correctly, become a really great Reverend Mother Superior, right? Because she has that sort of fire and that desire to get stuff done.
Yeah.
Similarly, in a kind of throwaway line, we see Griffin give the carved tooth to Tula,
right,
which is also nice. But Griffin mentions his own ambitions, which I appreciated. He wants to improve the trade deal.
That's right.
House Harkonnen gets.
Right. He's like, I'm going on a little field trip to Salusa Secundus. Papa, I'm going to get us a better trade deal. We're going to get rich.
Yeah.
And in fact, after the dinner scene, I mean, Valia storms off. Griffin runs after her. We actually get a sense of how close the siblings are and how aligned they are.
Yeah.
Valia, of course, is the more vocal and perhaps the more ambitious and angry sibling. But Griffin is also not just looking to sit around, as you stated, Leo, not just looking to continue the lot in life that they have. They're both looking for something better.
Yeah.
And it's clear that the two are quite close.
Yeah.
We also discover from their conversation here that Valia came upon the voice in quite a traumatic moment. Griffin had fallen into the icy river and was drowning, and she had basically compelled him with her voice to swim out of the water, to get his muscles to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a fun new origin point for the voice. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we cut from this nice brother-sister scene immediately to a dead Griffin.
Yeah, that was
and
really
a funeral
brutal
moment.
Cut.
It's a brutal cut. I was quite shocked. I thought I missed something because I was like scribbling notes in my notebook. And I paused and I was like, oh, I missed something. And I went back and I was like, I didn't miss anything.
Nope. It really goes from like, you and me, kid, we're going places. He did go places. He went to the grave.
Straight to the grave.
Like immediate.
Obviously, the family is broken up about this. Clearly, everyone loved Griffin. And Valia and Tula, in particular, are really shattered by the loss of a beloved brother. And the little detail that, again, we'll talk a little bit more about in depth later in our conversation, but we are told here that Griffin had confronted Vorian Atreides, the great rival of their house, and Vorian murked his ass.
Oof, yeah.
And obviously that's going to do nothing but enrage Valia even more, who already hates the Atreides.
Yeah, one of the themes in this episode is this idea of family trauma and how it generationally is passed on. But another piece of it for, in particular, Valia is how immediate it is. And this is also like seconds before she's sent to Wallach 9 to study with the Bene Gesserit. So she had this idea of, I'm going to be the truth sayer for Griffin once he's in the Lance Rad.
Right.
But that plan, of course, is shot when he dies. And then additionally, she's like, fuck the sisterhood. I need to look out for House Harkonnen and I need to do my part now that my brother's dead.
Yeah.
And that's when she's being sent to Wallach 9. So really, it's all so immediate for her. And I really appreciated that.
That fantasy of the future shattered in this moment, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure she was like, me and my brother, we're going to go to the Landstrad together. We're going to turn this house around,
Yeah.
We're going to tag team this all the way to the top, and boom, that fantasy goes up in smoke. And I'm sure young Valia here is just utterly heartbroken.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, back in present day, the sisters are stressed. All of the truth sayers from all the noble houses all dipped out for coffee at the same time. It's not suspicious. This is like, did your truth sayer leave at like 9:07? Yeah, 9:07 a.m. on the dot.
Mine too.
That's okay. We're not going to think about that. We're dumb.
Yeah.
Well, Valia has gathered them basically for a little strategic meeting, and she is giving them commands, assuring them, hey, everything's going to be fine. This is not the first time this shit's happened. I'm going to take care of House Carino. Don't worry about that. But what you all have to do is you have to intercept any additional attempts to undermine the trustworthiness of the Sisterhood. So do your part.
Yes.
Damage control, damage control, damage control. And Sister Michaela arrives.
I will say, looking really cute. I don't know if I said this in the last episode.
So beautiful. Yeah.
Maybe it was a little dark in that scene, but in the daylight, I was like, oh my God.
She's beautiful.
I have a huge crush on Sister Michaela.
I have a huge crush on too many people in the show. Because even the Zook doctor from last episode was like stunning. And then also Ori is so hot. I don't understand where they're getting these fucking actors. It's incredible. What's in the water? What are they doing? But yeah, no, Sister Michaela arrives looking great. And in just the most hilarious delivery of information, she goes, Lila died, which we find out isn't even literally exactly true. Like, she didn't survive the agony. Like, she didn't succeed in coming out of the agony. But also saying she didn't survive and then just like chilling while Valia is like, oh, damn. So we failed. And she's like, oh, wait, no, you didn't actually, because you actually got a message from Raquel.
Incredible. Sister Michaela, girl, compliment sandwich. You start with the good thing first, then hit him with the bad, and then end on a good again.
It's 101. Tact. All right? 101. Also, did you see she reworded the prophecy so it didn't rhyme?
Yeah. Right. She was like, here's the Apple Intelligence AI summary of this prophecy, you know?
Yeah. But also, it's like, I feel like Michaela heard your feedback and from the last episode. She's like, oh, it sounds dumb rhyming. All right, let's cut the rhyming.
Right. Cut right to the chase. It makes her even cuter, frankly.
She listens. She cares. Well, they didn't get, obviously, Lila didn't make it out of the agony, but they got some information from Raquel. Valia jumps to the conclusion, oh my gosh, gotta be Desmond Hart. I feel like the way she jumped to that conclusion, it's not going to be Desmond Hart.
Yeah, that like all but confirms it's not Desmond Hart, to me at least.
Yeah, so it's got to be something else. He's some other piece of the puzzle. But we cut back to the Wallach 9, and Tula is almost inconsolable. She is so racked with guilt over having really grossly manipulated this child into taking this risk.
Right.
But Sister Avila shows up, brings her some delicious-looking spiced tea. My God, looks so good. Bet it tastes like cinnamon. And comforts her, but also reminds her, like, hey, you've got a responsibility, and this kid's in a coma, and ultimately, procedure. Valia has made it very clear. When someone's in this state, no one's ever recovered from it. So at this point, it is better to let them rest, give their classmates closure. You know, Tula's like, give me time. I'll do it when it needs to be done.
Yeah.
Because, again, no one has recovered from this coma yet. It's only episode 3. We'll see what happens in the later episodes.
Right. From there, we return to another flashback, this time with young Tula, who is on a family bull hunting trip with her new hunk of a boyfriend, Ori.
Looks great. Great fella.
They got chemistry on screen. It was good.
They're a cute couple. They're really beautiful.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. Now, at this family bull hunting trip, she's trying to kind of mingle, right? We all remember that first time meeting your significant other's family. You're trying to make a good impression. You're trying to crack the right joke at the right time. There's always the one weird uncle who's like giving you the stink eye the whole time. And you're like, that's the guy I got to get on the good side of.
Also the like flirty brother, sibling, cousin, something like that, who's like, we'll keep this up later, toots. You know, it's like, ew,
right.
What was that look?
Right.
Why'd you wink? Get out of here.
Right. The vibes are weird, but she's doing her best to get along with the family and enjoy this hunting trip.
Yeah.
In fact, she actually calls over a young boy nearby who I suspect, and I might be totally off base on this, but I think this may be young Kieran, because we really linger on this boy a lot in this episode.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's the only one to survive the attack later in the episode makes me think like we're drawing some connection to a modern day Atreides, and Kieran's the only modern day one we know.
My first thought was like maybe Desmond, maybe Kieran's a possibility, but I don't know. I think it's too early to call.
Yeah. I think regardless, like we're lingering on the boy long
Yes.
enough and he gets enough screen time
Chekhov's
that
boy.
he's like some sort of significant
He'll be back.
ish character.
For
He'll
sure.
be back.
Yeah.
For now, we're just going to refer to him as young Kieran because that's how I scripted it here.
Okay.
Tula shows young Kieran how to skin and prepare the bait that will lure the Seleucid bull that they are hunting. When suddenly they hear a commotion, Tula runs over to find that Ori's horse has broken its leg. The poor creature, there's no healing it at this point. All we can do is give it a quick death and a release from this pain and suffering. She stops Ori from stabbing it and instead rushes back to her workstation and grabs the poison that she was just showing young Kieran.
Yeah.
And she goes to the poor animal and administers this poison to give it a peaceful death.
Yeah.
Which I thought was very sweet.
Very sweet, nice, handsome horse, strong horse. Feel like the horse has a name that rhymes with Ori for the subtlety of the foreshadowing later in the episode. And actually, I have a lot of good things to say about that, as much as I'm joking now. But yeah, in retrospect, it's like, oh yeah, okay, I see what's happening.
Yeah, right. But as you're watching it, it's fun.
Yeah.
The foreshadowing is only clear once you get to the end of the episode.
Totally.
Which is the best kind of foreshadowing.
Yep.
Now, remaining in this flashback scene, we do cut then to young Valia over on Wallach 9. We see her being this like rebellious young student, really getting on Sister Dorothea's nerves. It's giving Harry Potter and Severus Snape energy throughout all of this. And we see this ceremony a little bit later on outside in the rain where the acolytes are committing themselves to the sisterhood.
Yeah.
This is an oath that they must take. They're letting go of all past allegiances and taking a vow. Sisterhood above all, they say, before they're allowed to walk back into the school and out of the rain and cold. Everyone slowly does that over time as they meditate on which way they want their lives to go, their old lives or their new lives with the sisterhood. Everyone, that is, except Valia, who remains standing out there and is the last one standing ultimately in the rain, just soaking wet, crying. Even Dorothea is like, fuck this, I'm not waiting out here for you, walks off. And she's left utterly alone out there until what looks like nightfall, like practically the rest of the day passes. And Mother Raquella arrives and goes over to Valia and tells her, come in, let's talk. And Valia, a little hesitant, she's like, I haven't taken my oath. I can't move from here. She's very conflicted, right? She's got this Harkonnen past that she's struggling with. Doesn't really know that the sisterhood is really the thing she wants to commit the rest of her life to. Mother Raquella comforts her, says, hey, just come in. Let's talk. Forget the oath for a minute. And it's very sweet. You know, like they have this one-on-one. There's a lot of really great thematic Dune lines in here that touch on things like Amtal, right? I had written in my notes that Raquella says at one point, adversity is the key to change, which is practically the definition of Amtal to some extent. So I really liked this one-on-one between Raquella and Valia. And kind of sticking with the Harry Potter vibe I'm getting here, this is giving Harry and Dumbledore energy. Yeah. Raquella is very warm and inviting to Valia.
Yeah, even after Valia used the voice on her.
Yes.
And Raquella's like, I've never felt anything like that before.
Yeah.
So in this show, actually, it seems like they're kind of writing a new history for the voice, which is cool.
Yeah.
Now, going back to the bull hunting trip, it's been too long since we've seen beautiful Ori. Our guy Ori is in love, dude. Head over heels. Now, maybe it's
hasn't
just
even
the
been
trauma.
A year.
Hasn't been a year, Ori, but listen, I get it. It's totally fine. Plus, he just lost his horse today. It's been a hard day. He's decided, well, with that horse gone, might as well get hitched. And he straight up proposes to Tula.
Wow.
And they bang as we slowly discover that this entire party is House Atreides.
Yeah, very cool reveal.
And Tula is under a fake name, Tula Vale, which is straight from Mentats of Dune. Of course, Lanka Vale, Vale, Tula Vale. Okay.
Nice.
Fine. Great.
Yeah. One note I have here for HBO.
Yeah.
We're now 3 for 3 on the sex scenes, and it's getting gratuitous, even for HBO.
Yeah.
Every episode so far has had sex scenes, and so some sort of like pivotal either plot moment or emotional moment. And we got to find another way to get some feelings across, folks. At this point, I was rolling my eyes.
I will say this one felt less gratuitous than the previous
Yes.
ones. Like this
Yeah.
one was very tasteful. There weren't as many like long shots of like the naked lady.
Agreed.
I hear you. I completely agree. HBO will be HBO. I like to imagine their their contract is like, okay, but who fucks in this episode? You're like,
Yeah.
oh my God. Okay, the maid and a different servant. And you're like, great. Unconsequential, but we need the boobies. We need to see boobies. So yes, they bang. And the next morning, she attempts to slip out quietly. So it is then revealed that she poisoned the soup. Awfully, she gave the soup to like the child. She's like, hey, put this by the fire. He's like sick. And then we see them all like scooping it and eating it.
Brutal.
So she poisoned it, killed everyone. And the next morning, it kind of seems like she's trying to escape without confronting Ori. And he is basically like, oh, I'm so excited to introduce you to all my living relatives right outside. There they all are, hearts beating strong. Well fed, well rested, definitely alive. That's how I describe. That's what my favorite thing about them. They're all alive.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite quality about old House Atreides. Bunch of living people, and she is really panicking because she clearly has caught feelings for him as well. She clearly, her first thing that she says to him is like, I need you to know that I regret how things have to be.
Yeah.
And he is like blowing past all of the emotions that she's demonstrating. But she says, listen, I have to tell you, I lied about my name. I'm not Tula Vale. I'm Tula Harkonnen. He takes a long beat. He's like, well, I can understand why you didn't say that. But then he has this really beautiful, he expresses this very poignant idea that like century-old feuds, that's old people shit. Like if they want to cling to that stuff, if they want to carry that forward into their future, let them. That's not us. We can write our own future full of all of my living relatives right out there. You, me, and all of my family who are, again, right out there and probably still alive, maybe. Now, she is like, some things can't be changed. Some families can't be unpoisoned, my love. And they go outside to reveal all of the family has died poisoned from the soup.
Yeah.
And in a final moment, right as he's processing the trauma of his whole family being dead, she sweeps around him and, dare I say, on the point where you would put the Gom Jabbar needle, the high-handed killer,
fun.
she injects the poison, same place as on the horse, and then just like the horse, she cradles him, and she's, again, very visibly upset of having to do this. And perhaps because of her grief, when the young... You say young Kieran in this? Yeah, sure. Young Kieran. I don't think it is, but whatever. We'll get to it. When the young Atreides boy, I'll call him, sees her still alive, he hates soup, apparently. He sees her cradling dead Ori. She goes, run, get out of here, kid. Probably because of her grief. He escapes, which of course also makes her a liar later when she tells Valia, yeah, they're all dead. Every single one of them, not a single one with a leg brace escaped alive.
Yeah. Shouts to my fellow picky eaters. Sometimes you do win the day.
Yeah, dodge the soup. That's what I've always said. Nevertheless, her final moments with Ori are underscored by the appearance of a Seleucid bull just rolling up, going, is everything good here? Everyone's dead? Sick. Just checking in. All right, I'll leave you to it. You're clearly busy. Bye. Bye, girl. Bye, queen. And naturally, that's some beautiful imagery. The bull is the death of House Atreides, is the death of Atreides. Paul Atreides' grandfather, for instance, was killed by a Seleucid bull. So this is, again, some fun imagery for Dune fans to see that comparison.
Yeah, I liked how subtle this was, yet how powerful for the folks who know.
Yeah,
great stuff. All right, returning to Wallach 9, we begin to see young Valia thrive under Raquela's wing. Raquela has taken her into her confidence. She shows her things like the breeding program, this top secret thing that seemingly maybe Dorothea doesn't even know about. And we see young Valia boast to her friends, guys, I'm next in line. Mother Raquela says, I'm going to be Mother Superior.
I would say it seems preemptive, but what Raquel showed her was artificial intelligence in computers.
Like top secret.
Like the kind of shit that if that got out, your whole order is gone.
Yeah.
So it really is a moment of like, you are on the most inner circle possible.
Right.
And you have this power that Raquel has never seen before. So I could see the normies watching this and being like, oh, that seems hasty. But she has good reason.
Yeah.
She has good reason to think Raquel has put a lot of trust in her because she just did.
Yes. She is definitely in an inner circle of the Sisterhood at this point.
Yeah.
And speaking of a power that Raquel is impressed by, Valia also shares this power with her two BFFs here. She shows them the voice. How she shows them is kind of funny. She commands them to first look at each other and then for one person to slap the other. And they're quite impressed. They're suddenly giddy with excitement, and they ask Valia to teach them how to utilize this incredible power.
I swear to God. Okay, friends of mine listening, if you discover the voice and you show me that you have this power by making someone else hit me in the face, we're not friends anymore. I'm not giddy. I'm not excited.
Right.
I'm walking
Guess who's
away.
getting hit next?
I'm slapping you in the face. Fuck off. That is the most disrespectful way. She's like, face each other. Spit in her eyes. It's like, why?
Right.
Why is that so mean?
Yeah.
Even just being like, do a jumping jack would have gotten the job done. And again, as much as I'm critiquing choices made for the show, it is so much worse in the book. I'll talk about that later.
That's hilarious.
Yes. so disrespectful.
Yeah. Again, it's giving Slytherin. It's like, this is the Imperio curse. And it's like, teach me this unforgivable curse, please.
Oh my God. Imperio 6, sign me up. How do I Imperio?
Hilarious. Very Slytherin coded. Well, from there we cut to an agony ritual. Dorothea and Valia are present with Raquella while the rest of the acolytes watch. And Raquella is performing a similar ritual to the one we saw Tula did with Lila. These two up-and-coming sisters, clearly the two that are next in line potentially to be Mother Superior, are going to perform the agony and become full-on Reverend Mothers. Except at the very last second, Valia chickens out and rushes out of the room. She cannot do it. And I really appreciated this too, because she doesn't just chicken out for like plot reasons.
Yeah.
There was emotional reasons for her to do so. I really liked that Raquella at one point said something along the lines of like, you will now undergo the agony and face the ones who made you, quote unquote. Of course, like, she's got family Harkonnen baggage. Like, the ones who made her are Harkonnens. Her other memory is going to be full of fucking Harkonnens. And Valia, in her emotional arc as a character, has yet to face that. And so, of course, she would back out from the agony. That's too much for her to confront at this moment. So I really liked that. There was plot reasons to do it, but emotional reasons to do it as well.
I'll also say a quiet thing I appreciated was first that the acolytes have like old-fashioned garb. The subtle differences between this like 30 years prior, they have different clothes. The agony ceremony isn't like on a table with like multiple. It's like we see the kind of subtle progression over the last 30 years. We see changes to how the sisterhood does these things.
Yeah.
The words are the same. Some of those little like elements are the same. The poison's the same. It's still the Rossic drug. But we still see evolution. And as much as I've seen a lot of critique over like, 10,000 years, not enough has changed. We do see some changes, even just in this 30-year span, which is very cool.
Yeah, and the 10,000 thing, like, that's just a prequel storytelling problem in like all of sci-fi.
Yeah.
You just have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. Raquella then gives young Valia a stern talking to. Raquella clearly disappointed that her star pupil didn't want to go through with this thing.
Yeah.
Potentially the next in line. This is important for her to go through the agony. You can't be Mother Superior if you don't go through the agony. That's a prerequisite.
I thought this was wild when she was like, well, I was thinking about maybe going home. And she's like, I can approve that. Bye.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. Okay, you are. Yeah, she was pissed.
She was pissed. And she gives an ultimatum to Valia. She's like, look, clearly the thing holding you back is your family baggage. Go home, go figure that shit out, and come back a Reverend Mother or not at all. Here's the poison.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, whoa, now that is an ultimatum.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is a test. To go through the agony in a controlled environment with your fellow sisters there to support you is one thing. To just be told to like go do this shit on your own and only come back if you survive it.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's very intense and also different from the book, which I appreciated, because this does also feel like the agency is Valia's and it's between Valia and Raquella.
Yeah.
I thought this was great for sure. Now, back on Lankavale, Valia confronts her family. She talks to Tula, right? And Tula's like, I didn't think I could do that either. And asks a really poignant question. Valia's saying, Griffin would be proud of you for killing that whole party of House Atreides people. And Tula's like, I don't know, would he?
Yeah.
Like, have we gone too far?
I had written that down too. Would Griffin be proud?
Would he? Yeah. It was so like really, really beautiful.
Right. Was this for Griffin or was this for us? Was sort of the implicit in between the lines there. And I loved that so much.
And also, like, was this for you? Like, is all of this kind of your rage? And granted, she owns it throughout. But I think that's also what gives resonance to later when she says, hey, promise me that when we go to the Bene Gesserit, it's a fresh start.
Yeah.
Because it has been Valia's rage that has really been the catalyst for a lot of this.
Right.
And there is this moment where, of course, interesting that like House Harkonnen, they're all like, oh yeah, we know that you killed a bunch of Atreides. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It seems like it's public knowledge that this Harkonnen person murked a bunch of Atreides. And I'm wondering, maybe the kid already ratted her out, or if it was just...
Or did Tula just tell her mom, like, this happened, I did this?
Yeah.
Because Tula's, like, more honest, maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah, this was a little weird, I think.
I'm not sure. I feel like we will get more information about this, or it won't be important. But either way, the family is angry. The family's really angry at what Tula did, and they're angry at Valia for being the kind of one to really spurn her sister on, to say like, yeah, go. So Valia demonstrates that the voice for her is really mostly about knives. The voice seems really to be 99% knife related. And now I'm wondering, maybe her friends just didn't have knives on them, because if they had, she would have been like, take out your blade. And they're
hold
like,
it to her neck.
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, whoa. Okay, I'd much rather slap you than stab you with a knife.
Yeah.
So she uses the voice on her mother. She says, shut up, pick up the knife, and then just barely doesn't kill her mother, which is really, really a tense moment. And I was eating lunch and I stopped chewing to watch that moment, because I was like, oh my God, she wants to fucking kill her mom? That's crazy. So the mother is unkilled, but she walks away. This is really a breaking point for her and her immediate family, it seems. And alone in the cold, in the snow of Lankavale, she takes the Rossic poison and undergoes the agony on her own.
Wow.
Now, demonstrating the wisdom of the sisterhood, it is nigh impossible for someone to make it on their own in this universe. So, sure enough, Tula is there, finds her in the snow, and talks her out of her agony, only for her to wake up now an awakened Reverend Mother.
Yeah.
Really incredible. This also added so much resonance to the Valia telling Tula in episode 1 about Lila, you've done this before. You've talked people out of the agony before.
Right.
Like you've guided them back before.
And then Tula telling Lila, just follow my voice. You know,
exactly.
Tula is very much this like guiding light for people going through the agony.
Yeah, and then that moment is Valia reflecting on this moment that Tula saved her life by guiding her out of the agony as well. It's this reminder of what have we been through together. So cool.
I loved it so much. Yeah.
And then they have their moment where they say, okay, Tula says, hey, I'm coming with you. I'm going to go to the Sisterhood with you. But promise me, we're going to leave this stuff behind. And Valia does not. She doesn't go, yes, I promise. She goes, we have a new mission now. And I'm like, okay, not a promise. Did not promise her that this would be a fresh start.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap up this summary. We return to the present day, where the acolytes gather to say their final goodbyes to Lila. They're going to effectively pull the plug on Sister Lila here. Sister Jen, who's clearly very torn up by this, actually in a bold way, calls out Tula.
Yeah. For her manipulation.
She's like, you made her do this when you knew she wasn't ready. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
This never should have happened. This sacrifice, what did we even achieve from this? Sister Jen, definitely angry.
Yeah.
In a touching moment, though, that I think really shows us the relationship between the elder mothers in charge, Sister Avila actually comes in to support Tula and to back this decision, and kind of gives this speech about like many sisters before us have sacrificed for the greater good of the sisterhood.
For us to even be here. Yeah.
Yeah. None of us would be here if sisters like Lila hadn't made these difficult decisions, and if sisters like Tula hadn't made these difficult decisions. So it's a very touching moment of camaraderie between the two elder sisters.
If anybody here, anybody listening has watched Attack on Titan, this is very like Commander Irwin's speech, where it's like, we honor those who came before us, and we like give everything to those. But like that idea of like, Lila made the choice. She knew the risk. You have to respect that she had agency. Yeah. And what you're doing right now is you're saying she was some mindless victim. And was she manipulated? We can probably not talk about that much. But for sure, she was brave to have done what she did. And you should respect her bravery. And it was really like, hell yeah.
I think Sister Avila makes a compelling case for sure. Yeah, I was nodding along.
Yeah, I think she's great.
Well, after the goodbyes, Sister Tula does remove those plug things or whatever off of Lila's head, seemingly turning off the life support and ending her life, which of course we'll shortly see is not the case. We quickly cut back to Seleucia Secundus to check in with modern-day Valia, who does the most millennial thing ever. She loses her job and then returns to her parents' house to ask for help. I get it, Valia. We've all been there. The pandemic was rough.
Yeah.
But fun to see that we're setting up some sort of a Valia Harkonnen standoff in the coming episodes. Clearly, she still has baggage with her family, but now is feeling so desperate that she needs their help.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Now, in the final scene of the episode, we cut back to Wallach 9. We cut back to Tula, who is entering the secret breeding genetic archive room.
First time we're seeing it.
First time we actually enter, and we get a huge reveal. Lila is actually floating in a spice bacta tank, is the best way I can describe this. And Tula talks to an AI named Annural and tells the AI to keep Lila alive at all costs. And the camera slowly pans out from the room, and we see all of the clearly forbidden technology at work here in the breeding archive. And that's where we cut to credits.
This is, I mean, we've seen a lot of tech in Dune, you know, in Villeneuve's movies and so far in this series, like flying cars and stuff. But I thought they did a great job of making the computers really feel like a monumental reveal, which was very cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess the idea is that the spice will rejuvenate her mind or something. And maybe this is what's going to also be the discovery of spice as the sort of key ingredient for spice agonies moving forward. That being said, there's a spice-filled tank reads very Navigator to me.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's going to be Abomination. Like I don't know. I'm so curious to see where this turns up.
Yeah.
Very cool final scene. Very, very impactful.
Agreed. Okay, that's episode 3. Let's quickly chat about some of the things that worked, that we thought worked for us, and some of the things that didn't work for us. We already hit on some of these during the summary, but Leo, what from this episode really resonated with you?
Yeah, I mean, just a great episode. I'm having so much fun. I love this show. I loved seeing Lankavale. I've been very candid that like seeing new places that exist in the Dune universe on screen for the first time is really fun. And the feel of the snowy, icy, shitty planet Lankavale felt like very true to the books. The fur whale processing area felt very alive and bustling, people going about their daily, like getting their meat from the butcher. And like, it all felt very alive. And I loved that. It felt very populated.
Yeah.
No, I also loved Sister Avila just all over the episode. I thought she was excellent in episode 2, but in this episode, she just had some excellent acting moments. Her standing up for Tula's bravery was really, really sweet. and the speech was so well delivered. I just wanted to shout out Barbara Martin, who is the actress who plays Sister Avila. Really, really excellent. Now, Tula's actresses, my God, their performances are so good. Both the modern day scenes and the flashback to, Ori and the engagement and the poisoning and all of it. Excellent performances. Olivia Williams, Emma Canning, both doing an amazing job. Specifically, older Tula's response to Valia would be proud of you making that decision to kill Lila, where she kind of like smiles, but in that like pained, I don't really give a shit, but I appreciate that you're being nice, but also I'm hiding stuff. And okay, yeah, so good. Such good nonverbal acting. I loved it.
Yeah.
And also Tula's heartbreak over Ori Atreides, even as she killed him, was just so palpable and so excellent. The would Griffin be proud of us? 10 out of 10. Excellent. And then finally, I'll say the music I felt was way better in this episode. Much less present. In particular, the
Right.
Why is it so quiet? It would have been hilarious if we had a loud soundtrack at that moment.
Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you for listening to my complaints, HBO. Thanks for making some adjustments on the fly. I know the show was already cut. So I appreciate you going in and fixing everything.
Yeah. Always tough to re-edit last minute.
It's hard, but they clearly got it done. So thank you. And also you're welcome, listeners, for solving these problems on your behalf. What about you, Abu? I know that was kind of a long list on my part.
I honestly, all I have to say about this episode is finally.
Yeah.
Many of my critiques, the main thrust of my major issues with episode 2 last week, have been solved here. Because, folks, we're getting emotional stakes. We're getting interpersonal relationships between characters. We're understanding motivation, internal motivations for the characters. All of the things that were sorely lacking from episode 2 are present here in episode 3. And for me, it makes it the best episode we've watched thus far of this season.
Yeah.
We have a clear idea of who our central characters are in episode 3, who are the folks that we can either cheer for or cheer against even. Tula, Valia take center stage as our main characters, the emotional thrust of this story. And we desperately, I feel like, needed that in somewhere in the first 2 episodes. The first episode was very exposition heavy. The second episode was plot, 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 plot. And finally here is where we get the thing I was just so hungry for in those episodes. So I was really, really glad to see it. And it's a big reason why I so greatly enjoyed episode 3.
Yeah.
In fact, I would go so far as to say, if I may be so bold, they got the order wrong. This should have been episode 2, and episode 2 should have been episode 3. Obviously, sequentially, that requires a bit of re-editing, and you need to clean up some scene sequencing for the story to make sense. But we needed this first, because when I think of a lot of the moments in episode 3, how much more weight would they have had, emotional weight would they have had, if we knew these things about Valia and Tula? I would have much rather had this emotional stuff up front and earlier on, rather than getting it what is now, again, as a reminder, I keep harping on this point, 6 episodes, this is 3, halfway through the season, we are beginning to understand who our main characters are and what internally motivates them and what their emotional journeys are. It's something I feel like should have been handled much earlier to establish stakes and for the plot to then move forward with those stakes. I also want to compliment the writing in this episode. Certainly some clunky moments in the first 2 episodes, some on-the-nose dialogue that really felt like producer feedback and intervention about I'm confused. Will the normies be confused? We need to be very explicit and overly clear about this rather than just imply it or let it be subtle. This episode was much more subtle. Things like the bull, no words had to be spoken there. And it was for the Dune heads. It was there. If you can connect those dots, you're going to greatly appreciate that sort of thing. I liked that subtlety. Was it a perfectly written episode? I mean, no. I don't think Dune Prophecy is going to be a show remembered for poetic dialogue that sings. It's not the most strongly written show, but episode 3 was certainly head and shoulders above where the previous 2 episodes were. And so I wanted to shout that out as well. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, agreed. I thought some of the writing was really beautiful.
Yeah.
What about things that you wish were a little bit different? Are there any kind of adjustments you'd make?
Honestly, I don't know. I can't really think of anything. Like, this was, again, I think the strongest episode we've seen so far. And I don't really have any notes. I was glued to my screen on both watches. On my initial watch, I was like forgetting to take notes in my notebook because I was like so emotionally invested.
Yeah.
And even on a rewatch, I was kind of like, oh man, this scene is so good, isn't it? And I was like, oh no, shit, I'm supposed to be writing something down. So I loved it. I loved this episode a lot. We already kind of harped on Valia being a one-trick pony with the knife thing with the voice. It's a bit silly to have her. Again, another thing, we're like 3 for 3 now at this point. Every episode has Valia pulling a knife voice thing. Mm-hmm. But again, it's neither here nor there. That's such a small thing. At this point, it's something I'm really enjoying. I said this actually about the last episode too, is the lore and world building are the things I'm actually enjoying quite a bit. It's fun to be in a Dune universe and experiencing a Dune story. And at this point, I'm realizing that the more I try to nitpick the Brian Herbert stuff that I don't like, the less I'm enjoying just watching the show. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of just resigned to be along for the ride. Mm-hmm. The reality is we live in Brian Herbert's universe, and there will be Brian Herbert stuff in nearly all adaptations of Dune. And I'm just going to find a way to come to terms with that. I'm along for the ride for this show. So as much as that stuff annoys me, I'm kind of resigned to accepting it. I do want to share a hot take. I kind of teased this on our FaceTime call the other day.
Yeah.
But I want to share this hot take that I realized after watching and rewatching this show. I did not miss or even notice the lack of Desmond, the Emperor, Yanez, who's that other what's his name? Something Atreides, who's part of some rebel plot. Like,
yeah,
I didn't miss them one bit in this episode, which I think says a lot. I think there's actually somewhere in this season, I think there was a really great show that hones in on just the young Harkonnen sisters and their come up, on Tula and Valia particularly. And this episode shows it. This episode shows like, oh wow, there's a story in here that maybe doesn't even involve all of that Desmond psychic power stuff. That would be so good. And obviously that's not the show we're getting, that this is one episode of a larger story. We're definitely going to be cutting back to that Desmond Emperor Yanez stuff next episode, I'm sure. But man, I almost would have rather watched a show about two sisters dealing with their family trauma and coming to terms with their own power and growing alongside and inside this mysterious new institution that is beginning to take a foothold within this young imperium that's beginning to grow. I think you can still have politics because you have the Harkonnen house stuff. You can still have a lot of the DNA of what makes Dune Dune, but hone in much more strongly on these two sisters as the core of your story and their emotional journey over the course of that season. I don't think that's the show we're getting. In fact, I think I have a gut feeling that by the end of these 6 episodes, this criticism will still hold true. I think this show might have gotten a little lost in the sauce of trying to be Game of Thrones in space, which I suspect is probably the elevator pitch they gave to HBO. Here's a established property. Denis Villeneuve blew it up. People want this, and people love Game of Thrones. We can give that to you, HBO. Give us the money. Sign the check to make this happen. And so I think we're leaning a lot into the Desmond and Palace intrigue, which I'm now realizing doesn't quite hold the same emotional stakes as watching these two incredible actors and these two sisters do their thing and deal with their baggage. So I think I would add that to my very minor list of criticisms.
Yeah.
Which is not particularly about this episode. I think that's more of a larger show storytelling creative choice thing.
Yeah. I think you're right that like this episode needed to happen for us to really, really understand the stakes for Valia and Tula. And I think now maybe the Desmond scenes might have more resonance and more emotional stakes.
Oh, I agree. Yeah.
Again, Mark Strong is so fun to watch on screen, and Travis Flamel is so much fun to watch on screen. Yeah, I wonder if it if it'll feel as strong when we get back to the politicking,
Yeah. What about you? Did you have any nits to pick for this episode?
Yeah, well, only pretty much Brian lore.
Yeah.
And not to continue making an enemy of Brian Herbert, but the voice is so frustrating. And even if the voice does work the way we're expected to believe it does, she says to her two friends, both looking at her, "Face her." And only one of them responded. How? How does that one know to respond and the other one didn't? Who's who? How? Is this psychic powers? Do you have to be looking at them? What are the rules? What are the stakes? If you don't establish rules and consistent stakes, these powers make no sense. It's Wingardium Leviosa. Can I Wingardium Leviosa fucking Voldemort into space? Yes or no? JK, I want to know the rules. I want to know the stakes. So we know the rules and stakes in Frank's universe. So we've changed the way the voice works in Brian's universe. I just don't know where the limits are for this ability. And even going to the moment in Mentats of Dune where she kills Dorothea resists just because she's like strong. And then she doesn't. And then she dies.
Oh.
I just don't understand the stakes of the voice. And you're right that I think when I focus too much on it, it kind of steals a little bit of my enjoyment from just like watching a show that I'm really loving. So I do need to like balance these things. But I think it's also worth noting that like for people who are watching this who don't know about the original 6 books or haven't read all 6 of the original books, it's just better. It's the 6 books are just better than you'd expect.
Objectively, right?
Objectively.
Like there's just no arguing that.
In lore and consistency and all these different things.
Yeah. I don't even think Brian fans who enjoy the Brian Herbert books would argue that that they're superior to the Frank books, right?
Yeah, I think that is it's the coldest take I could possibly
Truly
bring to the table.
Frigid. We're on Lankavale suddenly.
We're at Lankavale take. Fur whale harvesting season take. But nevertheless, it is worth reiterating. And that's kind of it for this episode. Like all of my complaints were just like, hey, that doesn't make sense, but that's because of like Brian lore.
Yep.
Happy as a slig in the sty, as they say.
Yum. Stinky.
Yum. Stinky.
All right. Well, let's take a quick breather here, folks. But we still have more to talk about with this excellent episode. So don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to get into a couple of takeaways and dive a bit deeper into what we saw in episode 3.
Welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your break. Let's get into some takeaways that we thought were worth highlighting from today's episode of Dune Prophecy. And Abu, kick us off. What kind of stood out to you from today's episode?
So I wanted to spend a couple minutes here unpacking Ori's thoughts on this Atreides Harkonnen feud, because I thought it was very well written, very well acted, and quite poignant stuff that I think gets at some really interesting ideas in this story. There's, of course, like the actual history of what may or may not have occurred between the Harkonnens and Atreides, but there's also this idea of generational trauma and how it's passed down for over a century. And then, of course, the cycles of violence that we see people are trapped in because of these things. I think it's all wrapped up very beautifully in a really poignant scene with Ori. To get into it more specifically, once Tula reveals that she is Harkonnen, Ori takes a beat and then begins by saying, quote, "No one chooses the name they're born with," end quote. Excellent start, Ori. We're off to a great start, my guy.
Killing it, yeah.
Full-on husband material. You took a moment to collect yourself, you wrangled your emotions, and then you opened with a line that sets the stage properly, you know?
My guy's got thoughts that rival his abs. Unbelievable.
Unbelievable stuff from
those
Ori.
Shoulders.
He continues spitting bars because he then says about how their families, quote, "choose hate because of what they're taught. That a disagreement between our ancestors during wartime over a century ago should bleed into their future. But that is their burden, not ours." End quote. Who loves that?
So good.
So good. Amazing writing, you know, firing on all cylinders here. Beautiful stuff, really poignant stuff. And I think Ori is really cutting to sort of the heart of why feuds, grudges, rivalries, hatred of any kind, any long-standing hatred of any kind, is often based more on myth than fact, right? It's like a beast that feeds on itself as time passes. And I'm sure, certainly by the time of Paul, right? But even here, just a century later, I'm sure people like barely remember what we were actually fighting about. You know, do you remember? Because I don't. Like we just are supposed to hate each other, I think. And I think Ori's really cutting to that. You know, he's like, hey, this was not our problem. And this happened so long ago. Why do we have to still burden ourselves with this? Why does it have to continue to affect our lives? Really beautiful stuff here. And I really like that Ori is choosing not to let this myth of this beast of the past control his decisions now in the present, or shape his future, shape his life, the way he chooses to love, who he chooses to love. This is obviously a step away from the way their families have done it for generations. It's a really beautiful form of healing, I think, from generational trauma that I'm sure a lot of folks can identify with, myself included. Like as a immigrant, like I have a lot of cultural baggage, a lot of just like immigrant baggage. Anyone's parents who moved to the U.S. and told them shit like, we sacrificed everything to bring you here, so you have to pay us back. Like, you get it. You understand that.
Yeah.
Like, this is something I like really strongly identified with. Ori choosing to be like, no, man, was your choice and that's your baggage. Don't put that on me.
Yeah.
That, I think, is a really beautiful sentiment from Ori. And it really struck a chord with me.
It also is modeling for Tula another way that everything could be handled.
Yes.
Because so far Tula's only ever known Valia and Griffin, and she's only ever seen her parents, who suck, and Valia, who's way too angry about everything and is like, I have to take it into my own hands to fix the record. And then Griffin, who had his own solution to the problem, but got wrapped up in Valia's thing and then died. And so it's like and I think that also really informs how tragic her confusion is when she's like, I thought you would hate me. And he's like, no, like, what are you nothing could make me dislike you, because whatever shit is going on out there, like, that's not mine. It's so good.
That's a great point, Leo.
Also for what it represents in Tula's life too.
Yeah. And that's so true. Like, Tula is clearly trapped in a cycle that's perpetuated by Valia, basically.
Yeah.
It has never been modeled to her how to process this like generational Harkonnen and Atreides trauma, this baggage that the family has carried for generations. It's never been like healthily modeled to her how to deal with it until literally this moment with Ori, where she has already committed mass murder.
Yeah.
And it's too late to change course. It's really heartbreaking stuff. And I think, again, Emma, the actress, just, you see the acting on her face reveals all of this. You know, it's all dawning on her that maybe there was another way to go about this. There's another way, a happier way that I can let go of these things. But as we know, she doesn't. And to be fair, Tula herself has not come to terms with the Harkonnen family trauma. And more importantly, her grief over her brother's death, over Griffin's death, you know? And I think that's where the difference lies between Tula and Ori. For Ori, this feud is just like a thing he's told about, and it's a thing from, quote unquote, a century ago. It's not present for him, you know? It hasn't really affected him in a way. But for Tula, this is a real thing. Like, we don't know the exact timeline here, but like months ago, a year ago, like whenever her brother passed, this was a personal thing that happened to her because of this feud. It's an open wound for her right now. Whereas for Ori, maybe it's just like an old wound that people tell him about, but he's never actually gotten the paper cut himself. So who cares?
And it's worth noting that in Sisterhood of Dune, there's a bunch of extra context that we don't get in this show. In this show, the context that we have is Griffin sought out Vorian Atreides to make Vorian, or to encourage Vorian to set the record straight to repair the reputation of House Harkonnen. Why isn't that just a polite conversation? And why did that result in Vorian killing Griffin? Obviously, that's a villainous thing, if that's what happened. Huge caveat.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, like, I can see how it would be still very immediate for her, exactly to your point. Like, she is still in the midst of this trauma. which, is also very resonant with people who are still dealing with the ramifications of shit that's happened hundreds of years ago in American history. I think about my friends who have like indigenous family, or my friends who are Black or are immigrants, or like whatever. It's like shit that happened long in the past is still very much something they're dealing with today.
It's not a painful history. It's a painful present that is still happening right now.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah.
So many resonant themes wrapped up in that conversation in this moment.
For sure. And I loved the line delivery on this, but Tula is still trapped within that context, right? The context of what she has witnessed with Griffin and what she has been told by her older sister Valia, Quote, "We do what we must," end quote. "My hands are tied here, Ori. As much as I love you,
right,
this is what I have to do. This is the only way I can deal with this, And again, to kind of share my own personal experience with this, like, I get this too. As much as I understand Ori's side of things, I also very much understand Tula's side of things as well. Years of therapy have taught me that a lot of things that I thought were just things I had to do, my like people-pleasing tendencies or my like very workaholic attitude toward everything, that comes from the very same baggage that I've carried my whole life. And I totally understand that inescapable feeling of I'm doing what I must. I'm doing what I have to, right? This is what I have to do. And it's not until someone models another behavior or helps you work through breaking the must part of the equation that you realize that there are maybe different ways to handle things, or that there are healthier ways to go about dealing with the little t traumas and even the big T traumas in your life. And it's really heartbreaking to see Tula not have that kind of support system. There's only this way she knows how to deal with it. She thinks this is what has to be done here. It's devastating stuff, and it's a very difficult mindset to escape, especially, as we've discussed, when you mix this history with the very present grief of just losing her brother,
Right.
It's tough. And I really empathize with Tula in this situation as well. To be clear, I'm not endorsing mass murder as like a way to deal with your grief. Don't do that.
Yeah.
But I certainly know what it's like to feel trapped in cycles of your past and not realizing that there is a way out until someone helps you through it.
Yeah.
So I really felt the emotion in this episode. And in particular, I think Tula and Ori's story was my favorite part of this episode for these reasons. So I wanted to touch on it here in the takeaway. Like this is the human emotional storytelling that I love so much in sci-fi stories. And I'm so glad we got it in this episode.
And can very much be extrapolated to human themes throughout all of society.
Exactly.
Every time, every era.
Exactly.
It's the sort of like poignant things that Frank included in his book in 1965 that still is resonant today. So yeah, I'm right there with you. That's a great takeaway for sure.
Well, what about your takeaway? What did you want to chat about?
Well, the thing I wanted to dial in on is just how much better this show is than the source material. And God, the temptation is just to really dig into the book that I forced myself to read. But instead, what I'll say is I want to celebrate 3 changes to the seminal text, as it was called, that I think are really, really smart. And again, this is just to celebrate the good choices that the team heading this show have made, basically. There are lots of small changes, to be clear, and there are still some things that are in line and kind of wonky. And like you've said, there's also like moments that I thought were the script was a little like, okay, like Griffin and Valia talking, I thought was a little exposition heavy. Well, I was the one that fell in the water, and I'm the fool who jumped in. You're the fool who saved me.
Right.
It's like,
right. You compel me with
I don't know. I heard
your voice,
capital V in my head.
Yeah.
I felt.
Yeah. The start of the episode, I think, like the dinner scene in particular at the very top of the episode was very like clunky and exposition heavy, because it's like, Valia, you're talking to your own family. Why are you explaining family history as if they don't know it already? Like it felt a little
Maury and Atreides
on the
did X,
nose.
Y, and Z. They're all
Right.
like, yeah.
Yeah, we know. Can you just
Yeah.
eat your soup? God damn it.
God damn it.
So
Eat your
certainly,
unpoisoned soup
I
right now.
agree.
But anyway, it's fine. Exposition has to happen for people to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, let's talk about 3 changes I really liked. The first change that I love, Valia being forced to go to Wallach 9. And I love this change because in Sisterhood of Dune, Valia's motivations change paragraph to paragraph. There are times when she's like, Sisterhood above all. And then she'll be like, fuck this sisterhood. I'm all about House Harkonnen. And I'm like, well, that was a paragraph ago. You felt differently. But okay. Her character is like a byproduct of context rather than any kind of like internal, actual emotional reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
This series, I feel like 100% fixes that problem because Valia had a plan to go to Wallach 9, but then Griffin's death, the delivery of his body, this reminder of what House Harkonnen has lost and her connection to it and her immediate trauma, and then her being forced by her family to go to Wallach 9. Holy shit. Of course she's going to be at Wallach 9 being like, fuck this place. I don't give a shit who takes over after Rikella. What are you two talking about? It's like me in the break room when people are talking about FanDuel. What's the over under on touchdowns? I'm like, fuck off. I was forced to come here by capitalism. Fuck this place. So that makes so much sense. And in the book, Griffin's body shows up at the very end of Sisterhood of Dune. It's what motivates her to do the spice agony. But in this show, it's this kind of cruel reminder of what House Harkonnen has lost, which of course would weigh heavily in her at school. And although she understands what her potential can be through her conversation with Rikella, when she ducks the agony to return home, presumably a hero, I imagine the fanfare she was expecting. Hey, guys, the plan I had with Tula where I sent her to go kill a bunch of Atreides, it worked. Aren't we all excited about this? And she's greeted as a villain by her own family. She then decides to take the matters into her own hands. I'm going to get the powers of a Reverend Mother so that I can correct the record, blah, blah, blah. It all makes sense. Like there's this nice through line of her emotional reasoning and why she's doing each thing.
Yes, exactly. It's excellent.
And that is fully missing from the source material. Again, one paragraph, she's like, I'm going to befriend Anna Carino so that I will have a friend who is the Empress. And also, fuck this kid. Why am I stuck being a babysitter? Ugh. And I'm like, make up your mind. Have an opinion. I don't know. Just have a character, please. Second adjustment I love is the origin of the voice in Valia's life, which is to save Griffin when he fell into the waters in Lankavale. To be clear, in Sisterhood, she does save him from the water. He falls into the water. It's like freezing. He can't move his muscles. She jumps in after him and then just can move her muscles because she like is #built different. And she keeps him afloat long enough for them both to be saved. So it's kind of it's like, okay, she jumped in to save him. It's to demonstrate their love, whatever. Sure. But the idea of the voice in Frank's lore, the idea that you are compelling someone to do something, but through understanding how the voice affects people and understanding what they want and understanding, I can imagine within Frank's lore, Griffin is panicking. His mind is all over the place because he's awash in icy water, and he hears the desperation and the urgency in Valia's voice, and she says, swim. And I can see that being something that snaps him out of it and helps him survive.
Yeah.
That is so within Frank's themes. It's excellent.
It's excellent.
And again, it ties her creation of the voice, or her first experience with the voice, to a deeply emotional moment.
Mm-hmm.
In the books, she's kind of just fucking trying it out. She's like, I've been playing around with this thing that I've discovered since getting other memory. And it's just curiosity. I don't know. I loved that this took this ability, rooted it in Valia's emotions and her relationships. It's so good. 10 out of 10. Great choice.
Right. And rooting it in emotions. Think how devastating it is now that it doesn't work on Desmond. This thing that saved her brother's life.
Oh, great point.
The thing that has gotten her out of trouble time and time again doesn't work.
In her opinion, saved the Sisterhood, saved Raquela's vision by
Saved
killing
Raquel.
Dorothea.
Right. It's so personal to her, and to have such a personal thing fall flat in your face,
Yeah.
in front, like with Desmond Hart, how much more emotionally resonant is that? And how much better would it be if we got the Desmond scene after this episode? Am I right?
Well, yeah, sure, whatever. But also, it's the power that Raquela calls her. It's like it's part of Raquela's validation of her.
Yeah.
Like her being special is Raquela being like, hey, you've got this power. You're pushing what it means to be
Exactly.
human. Oh,
it's so tied with who Valia is as a person and a character, emotionally, internally, that anything plot-wise that happens with a voice now has like 10 times more weight because we know this.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
Good job.
It's a great choice. It's a strong storytelling choice. And I'm glad it's different from the book because the book sounds not good.
Not great. Now, the final thing I want to celebrate, the final change I want to celebrate, comes with the caveat. I know less about this because I'm reading Minutia of Dune, but I'm only like a third of the way in, and it seems like this thing happens later in the book. But a big change that seems like a big deal to me is that Tula actually appears to love Ori Atreides.
No doubt.
And this is huge. And this might be surprising for people who haven't read any of Minutia of Dune. Now, again, to reiterate, I might be missing some nuance, but I did my best. I found all the chapters where they're mentioned together when she's introduced. And I read those and was kind of not really seeing any additional nuance. So this really feels like a huge decision on the showrunner's parts. So in Mentats, Tula's marriage to Ori is like purely revenge plot against Vorian Atreides. And the idea being Tula's this like beautiful, enchanting woman. She's going to go become the star in the sky, all of the stars in the sky for this young Atreides. And then they'll kill him just to ruin Vorian Atreides' life. That's basically all of it. And just like the show, we don't see them meet. We don't see any of their come up. We don't see them really getting to know each other. But when she turns coat, she slits Ori's throat in bed. So in the wedding bed, they find his cold, dead body, his throat cut. And she like climbs in through the window and attacks Vorian Atreides and then escapes. So in short, as far as I can tell, Minutia of Dune focuses the whole like Tula Ori plot purely around getting revenge on Vorian Atreides, and Vorian Atreides is a boring fucking character. He is like a non-character.
Who the fuck cares about Vorian Atreides?
And then
so
Tula, also in that series of events, is this like two-dimensional, vengeful wrathful wraith, who's just fucking violent and mean and doing the things that Valia told her to, right? I saw how conflicted in this episode Tula was when Ori didn't reject her. And that makes it so much more heartbreaking that she has to kill him. And then just like the horse, she didn't come up behind him and cut his throat. Instead, she uses an injected poison. It's the kindest way. This is also why I think that horse moment is so beautiful, because she chooses to do it with this poison because she thinks it's going to be better and more merciful.
Yeah.
And then she does the same thing. She makes the same choice for Ori. And I thought it was hilarious to discover that in the book, she kills him by cutting his throat, the way he was about to cut the horse's throat. And she said, no, that's too brutal, violent, and bad. So instead, we're gonna use poison. We're going to use poison the way that is a little bit more merciful.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a subtle rejection of Brian's like brutish plot elements. And again, I think that this gives Tula an actual character, an actual three-dimensional character who goes out into the world despite her intention to like infiltrate this Atreides clan and get revenge. She falls in love because Ori is a great guy. So anyway, I just thought that this change of making Tula fall in love with Ori was so emotionally resonant. It made everything that you just talked about in your takeaway possible because they had this great exchange and talk and conversation. And it wasn't just she killed him off page and they find his body, whatever, cold and dead in the bed.
Yeah.
This is 1,000 times more relatable, more tragic, so in line with Dune's themes. Hat off, tinfoil hat off to the team running this show. Excellent
Agreed.
excellent work.
Agreed.
Oh, okay. Good Lord. Okay, we need to take another quick break, but when we're back, we're going to share some minutia, and then we'll wrap up this monster of an episode. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Welcome back, folks. Let's round out today's episode with our minutia segment by sharing some of the lore Easter eggs that we spotted in episode 3 of Dune Prophecy. As always, if we missed any, send us the ones that you caught. Let's start with fur whales.
Yeah.
So in this episode, obviously, we got some excellent shots of our furry whaley boys. The Dune fandom page actually calls these Jondax, which, scientific name or another alternate name, who knows. Something. In Mentats of Dune, they're just sort of repeatedly referred to as fur whales and nothing more than that. And so that's what we're going to go with here.
Right.
Some fun trivia about these fur whales from that book, from Mentats of Dune. We're told that fur whales, quote, were dangerous, especially when being hunted. The majestic creatures could dive deep into cold waters and escape, or they could turn on a pursuing boat and inflict some serious damage, end quote. Okay. Fur whaling, serious business, folks. Be careful out there.
Yeah, there's a line, by the way, about how their pectoral fin could saw off a man's arm.
Wow.
And I was like, what? But yeah, cool.
Nice.
There's a lot of details in Mentats of Dune about fur whales.
Hilarious. Now, it's not only Mentats of Dune and the Brian universe where whale fur shows up as a commodity. Duke Leto himself explains it early on in the first book when he's talking about Chom and the things that Chom trades and the economic influence that Chom has. Quote, logs, donkeys, horses, cows, lumber, dung, sharks, whale fur, the most prosaic and the most exotic. And the quote goes on. He talks about Chom and the economic influence there. But that is our first reference to whale fur.
Indeed.
So it does exist in the original Frank Herbert canon as well. Now, House Harkonnen's reliance on whale fur is actually also present in the original 6 books. Here's a quote from the appendices. Quote, the return of House Harkonnen to power generally is ascribed to adroit manipulation of the whale fur market and later consolidation with melange wealth from Arrakis. End quote.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, is that spoilers? So whale fur pays off, I guess, in the long run.
Whale fur pays off.
Dang.
It does.
There you go. Very cool. Whale fur. Fur whales. Neat. Our next minutia, Vorian Atreides and Griffin Harkonnen. So today we get a few throwaway lines about Vorian, quote, showing up. He showed up after doing whatever, God knows what. And then disappearing again after killing Griffin. And while in Sisterhood of Dune, Vorian's chapters are like the least impactful chapters, you can cut almost every single one of them except for 2, I think, toward the end, and then nothing would change. They are also some of the most ridiculous and action-packed chapters. And just to summarize a little bit of what happened between those 2 lines in today's episode, Vorian Atreides, ancient man, he's like 200-something years old, 300 years old, is being hunted down by his killer robot half-siblings.
What the fuck?
He ends up on Arrakis. So actually Griffin and him confront each other on Arrakis. So maybe, again, that'll be something that comes back. Maybe Desmond Hart was there. Maybe he saw what happened with Griffin. Who knows? We'll find out. And they do fight. They fight each other. They also end up kind of almost becoming friends. Like they have kind of some camaraderie until, evil robot siblings step in and kill Griffin Harkonnen.
Ooh.
So not all is what it seems, perhaps. Now, Vorian's chapters are mostly unnecessary, so we appreciated that this decision basically just gets rid of all that fluff and just focuses in on Valia's perspective, which, again, ultimately is the driving perspective of the show. Yeah. Very, very smart decision to just say, hey, let's get rid of the rest of that shit. Here's Griffin's body. And how does that affect Valia? Let's see moving forward.
Yeah.
Excellent choice. And that's a little bit about Vorian and his older robot evil siblings who are not robots technically, but are very clearly just robots.
LOL. Yeah. We'll see what direction the show takes this and whether there's more truth yet to unfold about how Griffin Harkonnen actually died.
We'll see.
All right, our next bit of minutia, the last one for today, is the Atreides salute. Did you catch this one, folks?
Loved
During
it.
that celebration in the bull hunting scene, we see the iconic back of the hand knife salute among the Atreides soldiers.
So good.
I mean,
Around
little
the
Timmy
fire.
Chalamet doing this
Just
is just one of my favorite gifs out there. I use it all the time. But this is obviously something that we saw in both Villeneuve films. Duncan, Idaho, Jason Momoa also does this. And it's super fun to see that, wow, this is a long-running tradition, a long-running salute within the Atreides family. Here, 10,000 years ago, we still have Atreides members saluting each other in this way. It adds a lot of depth to that gesture of honor, to know the history of it.
Yeah.
So fun to see that little bit of connection and that through line for the Atreides here.
Very cool to see. All right, folks, that's our episode. But before we let you go, we want to remind you of some fun ways to support the show and keep in touch with us. Two best ways, as always, hey, become a patron. Consider supporting us over there. We also have Dune-themed swag and merch on our merch store. Those links are in the show notes. That support makes what we do possible.
That's right. And of course, we love to hear from you. gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com. I was just looking at the emails this morning, and we have some great questions that we're going to tackle in these live Q&As that we've been doing every single week about Dune Prophecy. So keep sending those in. gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your questions, but also send us your thoughts. Send us your theories. Call out any minutia in the episodes that you caught that we missed.
Totally.
We love all of that, and we'll try to share it and shout you out in future episodes as well. So, gomjabarpodcast@gmail.com. Say hello, and we will do our best to respond, maybe. We're busy. We're doing a lot of work over here, but we'll try. We appreciate it nonetheless.
I was explaining to someone how much busier life is since this show started happening. I'm like, it feels like we're doing 4 episodes a week.
Yeah.
And,
yeah,
you know,
it's an intense production cycle we're in right now. So bear with us, folks. But we're having fun, too.
We are. And we appreciate everyone's support. Now I'm thinking about having a bowl of soup and dancing around a fire. Have they?
Yes.
Yeah.
I highly recommend you have that bowl of soup, Leo.
Okay.
The one right in front of you.
I'm not loving the look in your eyes, but the soup smells great.
No, it's very good.
Yeah?
I made it for you.
Okay. Yeah, again, really, the vibes are really intense.
No, not that one. That one, the one next to it. The one next to it.
Okay. This one.
Yes.
This one? Should I, with bread, without bread? What do you think?
Shit.
Unrelated to the poison.
I didn't think that through. Does it dilute the poison? Fucking bread.
I have an antidote in the sourdough. It's my COVID hobby is poison antidote sourdough loaves.
Really got into sourdough baking.
Mixed with, chamurky. Well, friends, there is no real ending. It's just the place where you stop the recording. But this podcast is always one step beyond logic. So help spread the word of Muad'Dib and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And be sure to check out the other shows on the Lore Party Podcast Network on loreparty.com. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at lore_party. You can also watch video versions of select episodes on the Lore Party YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, whoever controls the podcast controls the universe. We'll see you on the golden path.